Okay, so I'd like to welcome you all to the New Ideas and Innovation session. Very much like yesterday, speakers will have sort of 3-4 minutes to pitch their ideas, and then we'll have 10-11 minutes or so for discussion and questioning. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker for her pitch, Petra Agthe, who is Diagnostic Imager from the Southern Counties Veterinary Specialists in the UK. Thank you, Petra.
Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for the minute extension because I will need it. So you will probably see that I will come with more questions than answers, but I'm delighted to speak in front of so many people who know so much more about education than I do. So I would like to start with the first question, which is what we're currently formally valuing in postgraduate education. And I believe that when we examine postgraduate curricula and CPD requirements for re-accreditation and retention in professional bodies, it is clear that we still predominantly focus on clinical or technical skills. It's different in undergraduate studies, and in some postgraduate training it's different, but predominantly, formally, it's still clinical skills. While professional skills are generally valued, they are inconsistently included in the curriculum and therefore not equally valued, really, formally, I think, or weighted. So I'm here to ask, should we not really shift the educational priorities to reflect the whole range of abilities that we need to deliver high-quality contextualized care? Because excellence in the veterinary professions depends on so much more than just clinical skills, as we heard over the last day and a half, really. We are inherently a collaborative profession, and teamwork is essential for delivery of excellent care. So the important thing is also that it's not only veterinary staff, but other professionals and animal owners as core part of the team. So for the teamwork and collaboration to flourish, we need psychological safety. And this, and a collaborative and supportive culture, also helps to mitigate the many psychosocial hazards that we know exist in the veterinary work environment. So they can form powerful safeguards. Importantly, the question now is, how do we address these challenges? And if we want to create a psychologically safe environment, we need to ask, what do we need for that in the veterinary workplace to foster trust and psychological safety? The answer lies, I believe, to a large degree, in socio-emotional competence and the ability to understand our own needs, emotions, and behaviors and those of other people, to have the ability to self-regulate and co-regulate, to have effective self-leadership and leadership of others with a communication that forms connection and collaboration. And so I believe that it is time to revise curricula and CPD requirements in order to have a more human-focused and humanistic approach, and so that we can all fulfill our true potential as individuals and as teams. So the thing is, if we embed these elements in a syllabus or in an assessment, we send an important message, and that is that we value individuals not only on their technical or clinical expertise, but also as individuals who bring their humanity and the ability with them to support one another in growth and learning. And that will ultimately result in better patient care and in greater career sustainability. And so my last question is, what do you think about this, and what sort of training would you include? Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Do we have any questions from the floor, or answers even to Petra's questions that she posed? Yes, there's just one at the side there, Jenny.
Hi, I think that was really interesting, and I completely agree. Embedding it within postgrad education is probably the way to go, because I think employers' problem is whether they value their staff going on or spending a lot more on that CPD. Unfortunately, some do, some don't. But I would love to see kind of training on accepting feedback, and I think as a general, there's a lot of people who see any kind of feedback as a critique. They internalize this, and actually training in people accepting feedback, giving feedback, I think would be really valuable for communication and teamwork, so that it isn't seen as a sort of direct attack if someone comments on your clinical ability or interactions within the clinic.
Yeah, thank you. I think it comes back to that relationship building, and the relationship building first, and then how do we build that relationship so that the information is received in a way that is that contributes to that learning, and how can we train people to deliver it? Because also there might be an individual variation, and we know that it's the individuals vary in their needs that they have, in the way that feedback is delivered and received, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a really important area. I'm recently back in a university lecturing post, and of course, these days, it's very important that we make reasonable adjustments for a range of conditions or requirements that our students have, and I'm always delighted to do that. But it does cross my mind that is that helpful always to them in their next step when they leave the comparatively safe confines of the veterinary department and go out into those first and second roles, and having a bridge somehow, or having that additional support that extends beyond their undergraduate years into those first two years of professional life or more, I think is becoming increasingly important. It's all very well to protect them within the university environment, but actually it's a difficult workplace out there, no doubt. And I think developing socio-emotional competence is hugely important if we're going to help them cope with the profession and with those first stressful years of learning their role, and then with them hopefully staying on in the profession for decades to come.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. And I totally agree with that. I also think that it's important to develop these skills. Well, as we saw in the last presentation, I think things change, and also leadership, the way we lead people and expectations of people change. So people who are now in senior roles might have a very different perception of how feedback should look like. So I think starting to change things at all layers seems to be, to me, very important, so that the change is not only coming from below, but also happening at a different level.
Hi, Petra. Absolutely brilliant, and thank you so much. I think I want to come back to that feedback thing as well, because we often think, feedback's going to make people uncomfortable, and it's all about helping people learn from what they've done wrong. But actually, feedback is all-encompassing, and we have to normalise positive feedback as well. And by normalising positive feedback, we're actually going to be able to build that relationship of trust and build some psychological capital. So I think even in this room, we have to move away from feedback is something that's going to be negative to something that's much more positive. And that will help. And again, leaders beginning to learn from people like yourself and other businesses how to lead positively to then give difficult conversations that positive, empathetic, compassionate spin.
Yeah, thank you very much for that point. I agree. I think that we often, when we hear the word feedback, that automatically, with our negativity bias, we assume it's going to be corrective, but it's not necessarily. It might be supportive, and yeah, carry on with this. Yeah, absolutely. Well done, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's another question at the back, Petra.
Hi, Petra. You and I have talked about this a lot, so I just wanted to add, I was just picking up on the comment from the back of the room just now, that students, there's often this conversation about students maybe, are we preparing them for the real world kind of question, and I think we get the same thing with interns. If we make internships better, I don't know if that's quite the right term, then, are we preparing them for residency? If we make things, if we try to look at these things with residents, are we making things, unrealistic for them when they become specialists? And I think we've got to be really aware of that. And I think it's about making sure that when we put these things in place, we're looking at it from the perspectives of the learners. So I think this would be incredibly valuable for internship. We're doing it in our internships and our residencies, but I think it would be really valuable to work with the colleges on this from a kind of what's expected of a resident in their learning. But also trying to make sure that we're working with the educators in postgraduate training programs to, I guess, protect them from the effects or the unintentional consequences of making these things, making learners more aware of these things and encouraging them to look after themselves and consider these elements. So I think those factors are really important for that kind of educator perspective as well, and we mustn't forget them as we try to help our learners. And my final point is that it's actually quite hard sometimes to engage recent graduates and interns, in my experience, with this type of education. And actually, in my experience, residents are much more open to it, and actually it's primary care vets of kind of 4 or 5 years plus who have kind of been there, done that really, really need this, want this. I mean, need it as in they're asking for it. And I think it's something that we need to consider outside of training programs, as well as, the sort of, I guess, the CPD perspective, and how do we raise the profile of that or make it more appealing or recognised?
Yeah, thank you, Tash. Very, very important points, I think. And yeah, I guess it's a little bit that there will always be unintentional consequences, and there will always be sort of dynamics that are difficult to foresee. I guess the thing is that I was mentioning that yesterday to somebody, I think if we would rely just on awareness training alone without change of governance and laws, we would still drive without seatbelts and we would still be smoking indoors. So I think some degree of policy change has to support this, so that it's not only by individual motivation, but actually it's just a thing because it's important.
Thank you. I'm aware we are sort of running over time. Is your question really quick, or is it something you can ask Petra in the break?
Well, I think it's important.
It's important.
And I'll keep it short and just saying, so I'm Zach Mills, US, from the Lincoln Institute of Veterinary Business, and when you're pushing people out into the real world, and you're asking practitioners to give the feedback and do these things, it takes time to do these, and time costs money. And so we need to be able to consider what the long-term impact of giving feedback actually results in, not only for these students that are out there, the recent grads, but also for the clinics to be able to take the time and do that, and push that out there. Because if we're just asking them to do it without showing them the commercial impact, ultimately, of what this leads to, it's going to fall flat.
I totally agree. Luckily, there's a lot of research behind psychological safety saying or showing that in the long run, there is a business benefit to it.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you.